First of all, I'd like to apologise for how long this video has taken to come out, but there have been various factors, one of which I'm waiting until everything's 100% confirmed, definite, no way it's going to change, short of a weird situation that no one could have predicted. It's kind of there anyway, but I just want to make sure I've got everything. So there will be an announcement of what that is in the future, but like I say, it does have an impact, unfortunately, and it may have an impact going forward as well, but like I say, we'll talk about that when it's definitely in the bag. But yes, today I want to talk about The Sandman. This was adapted from Neil Gaiman's works and stars such a great cast. Tom Sturridge, who I'd never seen before but I want to see more of, Jenna Coleman, Kirby Howell-Baptiste, Mason Alexander Park, David Thewlis, the voice of Patton Oswalt, Stephen Fry. I cannot give a cast list that involves Stephen Fry and not say Stephen Fry. That would be sacrilege. So many wonderful people here, and they all do a really good job with what they've got to work with. Not that that's bad, of course. They elevate what was written into the visual medium. But this video isn't just going to be, here's my thoughts on the series. I want to sort of talk about three main things. The first is, yes, what did I think of the series? Because there's no point doing a review or whatever without talking about that. It's silly. The second thing I want to talk about is something that I shouldn't have to talk about in this day and age, but here we are. And that's the controversies. And the last thing is Neil himself. I know a while back I talked about wanting to do a Mike Flanagan piece. I still do. But again, things are happening, and that's probably going to be like way in the future till I'm able to really sit down and watch Mike Flanagan's entire body of work again to do that video. But it will happen, as long as YouTube's still there by the time I'm ready to do it. But yeah, I want to do this piece on Neil here because I don't think it's a bad place to do it, and I'll finally get that off my chest as well, all my thoughts about how wonderful Neil Gaiman is. I've never read any of the source material. My only real knowledge is stuff that I've read in preparation or interviews I've seen that have discussed stuff about the characters, and the sort of slight introduction that we got through the Lucifer series, which I did a video on recently as well. So I had a vague idea of the characters and the plot, but I didn't know super tons about it. I was as fresh as you could be almost. And as someone without a massive history of loving all of the original material, I love this version just as much as I probably would do that. I think the adaptation works really well, partly because Neil himself has been involved in all of this. He is such a great writer, and he understands working in different media. I've seen various episodes of TV shows that he's been part of, like Doctor Who and things like that. And you can always tell it's him. And of course, I'll touch on this in the final section a lot more. But there's something very Gaiman about some of the writing here. And it really does show. His ideas, his intention of what he wanted this story to be are clear. And even the random episode that dropped 2 weeks later, which luckily because of the delay in me watching it, I was able to watch it as part of the run. I didn't have that 2-week gap, and I think it was fine with that. I mean, the 2-week gap might have been a good breather for some people, but for me it was fine. I enjoyed it as part of the run, as a nice little cap. But I really did enjoy every moment of this, and I do have to respect the fact that many adaptations out there would go, right, so the quest for Dream's items of power, that should be a season on its own. They would have dragged that out. There wouldn't have been a battle of wills between Lucifer and Dream. It would have been like, yeah, let's bring the demons in and we'll have a big fight in hell. And it's like, that would not be true to Neil's vision. So I love the fact that A, he's involved, and B, they were like, yeah, it's fine. We'll just do a half a season getting the items, and then it's the fallout. It is still part of the same issue, the fact that he was out of commission for so long, which is longer in this adaptation because they are making it now than it was in the original material. I know that. But everyone here, like I say, is a good version of the character from my understanding of them. I know that there's a lot of people who aren't necessarily happy with Jenna Coleman as Johanna Constantine, or Constantine. That's the thing I don't agree with. It's Constantine, not Constantine. I do not agree with that pronunciation. But a lot of people weren't happy with that. It's like, why are you bringing Clara into it? People who didn't like her in Doctor Who will also have been very vocal, obviously, about that. But new role, I don't think that you should say this person was bad in this role, or I didn't like them in that role, or whatever, so it's going to be bad in this one. I think you have to take it on its own merits. Was it the best part of the series? No. But did it work because DC actually have the rights to Constantine because he was created for Swamp Thing by Alan Moore? Yeah, okay, so we still got something that fit what Constantine's character would have done in the story. So it didn't mean that we had to really bend everything to just make this story work. I'm happy with that. And where it leads us into the next season, where, you know, the sort of battle will take place, and, you know, this rising up against Dream, the factions all fighting a lot more overtly, perhaps. I don't know. I've not read the source material. I'm eager to see what's next. This has kept me interested. Gwendolyn Christie, like many of us, I was introduced to as Brienne of Tarth. I actually looked something up the other day about her career and things like that. She was told that she would not act. An agent said to her, yeah, good luck getting screen jobs. But she saw Tilda Swinton and said, she's kind of otherworldly, so why not? And weirdly enough, Tilda Swinton was in the Constantine film, so there's a weird connective thread here. But that was my introduction to her, and everything I've seen her in since. I mean, I don't count Captain Phasma because you don't really see her. Anyone arguably could be in that. Yes, the voice, her commanding tone of voice is great for that. But here, she's different. This is not the same character as either of those two. She's showing a bit more of her range, but she's still got that commanding tone, but she's kind of like the, I'm going to be very charming. And, you know, she's not Tom Ellis, of course, but she's very charming and things like that. That's her way of trying to get people to do what she wants. And that battle of wills between them, that sort of imaginary battle. And someone did say something to me about it where despair can beat hope. And it was like, but despair is Desire's twin. So maybe Dream can't use the power of another of the Endless, if that makes sense. He is not despair. He cannot use despair because despair is another person or being. That's my thought. Again, I don't know if that's explained in material. Please don't let me know in the comments. I don't actually care that much. This is just my headcanon, and it may be explained in later seasons, so I'm happy to go along for the ride. But yeah, this series so far, on its own merits, including the Cats and Calliope thing. The Calliope thing less so, but I enjoyed all of it from beginning to end, and I like how they've set up what is coming next. So, the next thing I really want to talk about, but I don't want to talk about, is the controversy. People had issues with two very specific pieces of casting in this, and I'll deal with the one that I think's got the best instantaneous slapdown. So Mason Alexander Park is an actor who goes by they, them pronouns. Fine. No issue, of course. But people were saying, well, Desire isn't like they, them. I mean, you know, they had a child. They had a child. But one, they're of the Endless, so rules are probably different. Two, Desire in Neil's vision is non-binary. Because what's better for a creature that embodies desire? Being limited to people who are attracted to one sex and one gender expression? Or someone who is attractive to as many people as possible? I mean, you're not going to get the asexuals in there probably, but you can at least try. What do you desire? No one to be sexually interested in me. Fine. Arguably, you could make that work. So, Desire as a non-binary character, played by a non-binary actor, because why not? Let's have people who live that world play that role. It's simple. Neil himself has gone, what is wrong with you? Do you not read the source material? People have claimed that he does not care about the source material. And he's like, you don't know, for the last 30 odd years, how many times I've had a terrible script treatment or a terrible series outline that I've had to go, excuse me? Have you read the books? So if anyone cares about this material, it's the guy who wrote it and is part of these adaptations of his works. So, yeah, non-binary actor, non-binary character, no issue, argument closed. Now, the other one, and this, I don't know if I hate this more, because this is something we've been used to for a lot longer. People were up in arms about Kirby Howell Baptiste being cast as Death. I'll let you figure out why. Let's just say it isn't because she's a bad actress. And I'm like, no. This is bad. People again saying you don't understand the works, and it's like, well, it's an anthropomorphized thing for death. You know, we're happy with a skeleton as the Grim Reaper for a lot of people. What's different, really? They're all different interpretations. This is not meant to be a one-to-one comparison. There's a difference between adaptation and literal recreation. And at the end of the day, from something I read, she came in, auditioned, and blew them away. Now, I might be misremembering that. It might not have been that amazing. But still, she did a really good job, and that got her the role. It wasn't being woke. It wasn't... I don't know if that term's even used anymore. I saw something the other day, and I'm like, I'm scared to use terms anymore. But I'm going to use it because that's what I know. So, you know, it wasn't being woke. It wasn't pandering to the demographic who are like, oh, you should be more inclusive. It was, she came in, she did it well, she got the role. That's how acting works, people. As long as it's not specifically cast, I know I've just said, if people do the job well, whatever, after saying non-binary actor, character, etc., for desire, but if it's a fluid role, ironically saying that, then whoever's good for the part should get it. That's always been, I think, my belief system, if you will, around that. And anyone who isn't happy with death being played by a young black woman needs to go away, in more severe terms. But I'd like to keep my language family-friendly where possible. I think she was amazing, and in fact, one of my favourite episodes was that day that Dream spent with death. I cried multiple times, and I'm going to talk about this in the final chapter a lot more, but it got me, and it got me good. And you know what part of that was? Her acting. So, questions over with that. She was good for the part, she did it well. Same applies to Mason Alexander Park. They were good for the part, they did it well. They were right for the part because the guy who wrote it thinks they were, and who understands the world better than its creator? Yes, I know once it's out in the world, it is up to the whims of those who consume it, shall we say. But authorship does count for something. But I'm going to get off this soapbox because I felt ranty there. So I'm going to bring it down and talk about something much happier in a weird way. Neil Gaiman himself. I have loved everything that I've come across that Neil Gaiman's been a part of, including influencing Tori Amos. And I made a realization over the years, whether it's, writing things like Coraline or things like this and everything in between. He is a hopeless romantic, I think, in there. That's not necessarily the biggest thing I want to talk about. I mean, I know there was an issue with him around the whole COVID situation that potentially nearly broke up his marriage. I don't know if that was the factor, but there was an issue and it happened around the same time. It seems to have been sorted out now, thankfully. But he approaches things in a very creative way, I'll say. There are things in this world that we don't want to discuss that much, like death and dying and various other horrors that we visit upon each other. I mean, that's something that happens regardless, but we make it worse sometimes. And he understands that sometimes these horrors that are visited on people are done by those who have had horrors visited on them, and not necessarily, again, man-made ones. He understands that people can be flawed and broken and trying to do their best to still do bad things. He understands that life is a fragile play, I guess, taking it a bit Shakespearean, that we all participate in the roles that we are given, but we have flexibility in those roles. We can ad-lib like any actor can. And we can make those roles our own. We can change the script a little, as long as we've got good actors around us who can bend their performance to suit ours. And if they can't, and if they're wrong for the role, and they don't work with us as chemistry, we change the actors. He understands that life is this wonderful tapestry, and there's beauty and decay. There's hardship and there's victory. There's pain and sacrifice, but joy and survival and winning against all odds. And like I said, this exists in Coraline as well. I promise you, go back and read it. All of this is in there. And that's one thing I love. Always teach the kids the hard lessons. But he doesn't come out and say these things. He doesn't come out and do these things in a very on-the-nose, boom, here's Life Facts 101 with Neil Gaiman. He does something that I've always appreciated. I can't remember who it was. I saw something that someone had basically said to a fantasy author, may have been Tolkien, who knows, that fantasy is just escapism. It's not, you're not dealing with anything, it's just not living life. You're not experiencing things, you're just going into a different world. And whoever it was responded with something that I've carried with me ever since. Fantasy isn't an escape from the horrors of life, or even the good things. It's a way of tackling them in a way that is more palatable. If you literally say, people died in the millions during the 2 world wars, that's very black and white, hard fact, hard to swallow kind of information. But if you perhaps create a story, an allegorical tale of the horrors of war, couched in a fantasy setting, it's a lot more palatable. And I'm not talking about Lord of the Rings as an allegory, because Tolkien says himself, it's not allegory. And I'm going to take him at his word. I mean, it could be argued that it is, and he was just kind of going, no, he didn't want it to be that, and he doesn't want to cement it. He always believed in applicability, which is the reader bringing their own interpretation. And again, this is very important with fantasy and how it tackles things. But you could do that, and it would be a lot softer of a thing to take. It'd be a lot easier pill to swallow. And the reason that I really love that death episode is because this is dealing with the fact that it doesn't matter who you are or what your background is. Death will come for us all. You could be any age as well, and that's this is my warning. I may tear up during me talking about this. I'm not ashamed of it. It's going to happen. Emotions are good. How you react to them and use them is often the bad one. But the old guy playing the violin, that got me, because it's the sweetness. It's like you've had a life, and you're just like, oh, can I have just a little bit more? I just need that little bit extra. The baby got me because I think I've said in many videos before, the cutting off of potential is something that I always feel bad about. It always really cuts deep into me. That baby could have had a long life, could have done a ton of things, but it just isn't going to get him. And I'm slightly tearing up. I don't know if it's showing up on, but I can feel it. But the guy, if you saw Franklin, if I recall correctly, and it's like, oh, I'll see you later. I was like, oh, he's going to die. And I wasn't, it's not that I wasn't bothered, it's because it's just the middle of his life. It didn't hit me as much. It's like, okay, so he's done some stuff, and he hasn't had to go through the decrepitude of old age, as it were. And it still was affecting, but I was like, okay. She was quite playful with him earlier, I'll see you soon. And I think of Terry Pratchett's death in a similar vein, like, I'll see you soon. But obviously that would have been the heavy reverb speech kind of thing. I love the fact that this softness of the character, because she says, I could just let it happen and just shepherd him off whenever, whatever, it doesn't matter. But I'm there for them because they need someone. In Donnie Darko, there's the whole thing about every living thing on this planet dies alone. And this version of death takes that and goes, but they don't have to. I can be there. You've had friends who've helped you in life. You've had your milestones watched by all and sundry. If you're lucky, obviously. Not everyone has supportive life. But regardless of whatever has happened, whoever's monitored your life milestones or not, I will be your friend at the end. Now I sound like Chucky from Child's Play. But I will be your friend at the end to guide you to whatever comes after. Whether that be nothingness or some Elysian fields kind of thing. And this, to me, is the encapsulation of Neil Gaiman. He tells us that death comes to us all, but death can be a friend. Things will happen to you that are out of your control, but you can use them to your advantage. You can see them as a teaching moment. You can see them as a test of your resolve. If you're religious, you can see it as a test from whatever you believe in. But at the end of the day, we all have these things we have to go through. The only sure things, death and taxes. But taking the moments in between, there's no way around that. We all can do it. Even if you think you're working 100 hours in a week, you've got no time for anything. You've got dreams. Try and go to bed with a positive mindset and dream of the nicest things you can, even if you can't do anything in your waking life or you don't feel you can. Because those dreams will then start to inform your waking life. Your mindset will change and you may find yourself finding moments to seek these oases of beauty. And yeah, that's Neil Gaiman to me. A man who understands the human condition but knows that if he just said it outright, no one would listen. So he creates these wonderful works and their adaptations and allows us to say, yes, not all that we think of is bad is evil, and not all that we think of is good is good. But take what you can, where you can, and remember, death can be a friend. And I think that's a really good way to end, because I'm getting emotional, and I might need to go and have a cry. But yes, those are my thoughts on the Sandman and its controversies, and Neil Gaiman, and I'm happy for Season 2 to roll around so I can cry some more. But that's all for me today, so thank you very much for watching, letting me get emotional, and until next time, as always, take care.